Hello everyone and welcome to PLAR podcast, where we explore all facets of prior learning assessment and recognition. I'm your host, Andrew Skapenko, and I'm very excited to introduce our guest for today. Dr. Christine Wihak retired as the Director of PLAR at Thompson Rivers University Open Learning and Director of Prior Learning International Research Center in Kamloops, British Columbia in 2018. Her involvement in PLAR developed when she was teaching Inuit students at Nunavut Arctic College. Dr. Wihak holds a Ph.D. in Educational Psychology from the University of Alberta, a Master's of Psychology and a Graduate Diploma in Public Administration from Carleton University, and an Honors Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Queen's. She was also a registered psychologist in Alberta, specializing in occupational and organizational psychology. Welcome to this episode, Christine. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's a little warm, Andrew, but we're doing pretty well.
Maybe we could start with our first question for today. Christine, before we go into details of PLAR, could you explain us what PLAR is and how does it work?
Well, the definition of PLAR really is in the name. PLAR stands for Prior Learning, Assessment, and Recognition. So the prior learning refers to learning that someone has acquired outside of the formal educational system through work-related experiences or non-formal on-the-job training that they might have received. And it's prior to them coming to a new situation, either to try to get some kind of credential, get recognized in a trade, get papers in a trade, or possibly to get a new job. So in the PLAR field, we try to assess learning in a reliable and valid way and allow the person to have recognition for learning that they've already got, rather than have to go through some kind of retraining or education that duplicates learning they already have.
That is quite interesting to learn that we can gain a recognition of our learning not only in the classroom but also outside of a classroom in such places as you mentioned, the workplace or even when doing a trade.
Well, it really depends on what they're hoping to use PLAR for. My field was in post-secondary education, and we had a dedicated PLAR office. So it was with a website, a web page within the Thompson Rivers University website. So it was pretty easy for students to find out about it. I worked in the open learning section, and every student who registered in a program with open learning received an email informing them about PLAR. So there was pretty good awareness. Now, it's really going to depend, each institution, it's going to depend on how well they publicize PLAR. Also, that would be true with trades or professions. Like in British Columbia, the nurses profession has done a lot of work in using PLAR for internationally educated nurses, and they have a lot of information available about that. But other professions might not have any information available or might not have a PLAR process. So there isn't one size fits all answer for that question, Andrew.
If I understood correctly, PLAR can be used not only in post-secondary environments like universities and other educational institutions, but it can also be used at professional associations?
Yes, it's used a lot for internationally educated immigrants who are coming to Canada and trying to get recognition within regulated professions for training that they've received outside of Canada. That's a very important use of it.
PLAR is definitely a great resource for individuals to harness when they are exploring ways to practice or get back to the occupations that they were working in their home country before coming to Canada. Christine, how did you get into PLAR and how did it all get started?
Well, I think it was kind of a gradual journey. I actually worked back in the 1980s on an Ontario Cabinet Commission on immigrants' access to trades and professions. And that was what first introduced me to the idea that people coming from other countries had trouble getting their education experience recognized in Canada. And interestingly, Joy Van Cleef, who was one of my close colleagues in PLAR, was very instrumental in getting PLAR going in the province of Ontario. And she also worked with that commission. I was working as a researcher with a consulting company that was doing the study for the commission, and she worked directly for the commission. But we both kind of got our PLAR start with that cabinet commission. Then when I worked up in Nunavut, now we just had our first Indigenous Governor General appointed in Canada, Mary Simon, who's an Inuit, and I worked up in Nunavut with Inuit students and Inuit colleagues. And it really bothered me that many Inuit had received a lot of non-formal training. They hadn't gone to university necessarily, but they might have had many years of on-the-job training and mentoring, and were perfectly capable of doing the same job as I was doing with a master's degree. So it seemed to me that we had to find some way to recognize that. And I was in charge of a management studies program at Nunavut Arctic College, and we had a very big focus on trying to get Inuit managers ready to take over in 1999 when Nunavut became a separate territory. So I happened to run into a woman named Angelina Wong, who was the dean of acting dean of continuing education at University of Saskatchewan at that time, and she was actually just doing a big study on PLAR for the Saskatchewan government. And it was just kind of a fluke that I just happened to be in her office. Was in Saskatoon visiting some relatives and had some spare time, was looking at some publications they had for sale, and saw this publication on prior learning assessment and recognition that she had written. And I knew right away that that was going to be very important for Inuit. And fortunately, she was available to chat just then. Somebody had canceled an appointment, and the rest is history.
It sounds like it was a happy coincidence of the goal that you have been working towards for the Inuit students and PLAR coming your way, and it all happened so organically, which makes it even more fascinating.
Yeah.
How did you like practicing in this field, and what were some of the most memorable times while working in PLAR?
Well, it took a long time before I would say I was working full time in it. At Nunavut Arctic College, we did get a PLAR process going, but for management studies. But many students just continued to be just regular students. Then I left Nunavut and did a doctorate in educational psychology, and I wasn't really involved in PLAR at all during that time, except I kept my little toe in the field by serving with an organization, Council for the Advancement of Northern Development Officers, Native Development Officers, and they had a PLAR process. So I served on their PLAR committee, but didn't do a lot of work for them. And then I started at University of Calgary, and I was able to obtain a grant to research, to do a literature review on research on prior learning assessment and recognition. But still, it wasn't a full time. That's not what I was doing full time. And then after a couple of years, I got the job at Thompson Rivers University, which became that became my full-time occupation. And that was a very exciting time because I did a lot of presentations at international conferences and was able to gather a group of internationally known PLAR scholars from places, England, Europe, South Africa, Australia, and we brought them together at TRU to become this Prior Learning International Research Center. And we published a couple of books together. I think probably in some ways one of the most exciting times is in conjunction with BC Plan, we sponsored an international conference. These international researchers came and made presentations, and we had, I think it was about 150 attendees at this conference in Vancouver, and a book actually came out of that conference. So that was a pretty exciting time.
I imagine. I have myself heard from a few PLAR professionals that Thompson Rivers University has quite a robust PLAR program in BC. I imagine how exciting it would be to work in such an environment and practice PLAR. Christine, speaking about the benefits of PLAR, what are some of the benefits that PLAR can bring to individuals, employers, and post-secondary institutions?
Well, it really varies depending on the stakeholder. Obviously, for individuals, if they have learning, but it's not recognized by in an academic degree or in an apprenticeship or in a job competition, it's an advantage to them to have some kind of valid and reliable recognition of that learning, to advance their careers. We used to advertise at TRU that PLAR saves students time and money in completing a credential, and it does. For employers, I think that they may find that they have unrecognized talent amongst their employees if they're looking for people to advance into management positions, or it could cut down their costs of training if they were able to assess what their employees already knew, and give recognition for that rather than provide training for something that people already know. For post-secondary institutions, it's a way to attract older students, a particular demographic, anyone sort of who's got a few years of work experience. And we also know from research done in the States and Canada that students who earn PLAR credits actually have higher degree completion rates and higher GPAs. So the post-secondary institution benefits both from student recruitment and from student retention.
That is quite impressive. 3 different stakeholders, and PLAR has something to offer to each of them. I think this is very useful to know, especially nowadays in the stage of workforce reskilling and upskilling in attempts to minimize the impacts of COVID. Employers can definitely benefit from saving costs and time to upskill their employees, and individual learners, cost savings is a strong reason to consider PLAR for them as well. Christine, as with any profession, we have emerging PLAR practitioners who have just entered the field and are developing their expertise. As an experienced PLAR professional, what advice would you give to those who are just starting, and what are some of the smart practices in PLAR that new professionals can harness?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that most people don't set out to have a career in PLAR. They kind of get into it because they've maybe they're working in human resources or career development, or working with immigrants, or as in my case, working with First Nations people. But it's not like there's a place where you can get a degree in PLAR. There are places that have had certificates in PLAR, but that's again for sort of people who have kind of wandered into PLAR from some other profession. And a lot of post-secondary institutions don't have a dedicated PLAR person. It's done within schools and departments, off the edge of somebody's desk. But if somebody becomes a PLAR enthusiast in some way, or sees it as becoming a significant part of their professional work, the first thing I would say is, please don't reinvent the wheel. A lot of people, when they realize the potential of PLAR to how much it can help people, get really excited, and because they're coming from a different set of professional training. They don't realize how much research and publications have actually occurred in the PLAR field, that there's oodles of material out there. PLAR's been around for over 40 years, and I mean, longer than that. In France, it started back in the 1920s. So there's lots and lots of material. But because people don't generally take professional training in PLAR, they're not aware of it. So I'd certainly advise anyone who's getting interested in it to first spend some time looking up the resources and reading the material that's already available, rather than feeling that they're starting from scratch.
It was quite interesting to learn that PLAR started in 1920s in France. Is this where it has been developed at?
Well, there's kind of a debate between the French and the Americans. The French were using it in the 1920s, but they didn't spread it around the world. But then in the 1970s in the States, there was a fellow or a small group of people who became aware or understood that PLAR existed, and they became very enthusiastic about it for use with military veterans after the Vietnam War. And they became what you could call proselytizers. So they spread the PLAR practice all around the English-speaking world. So yes, the French were doing it, and maybe they told the Quebecois about it, but the English-speaking world became aware of it through the people from the States.
Do you think PLAR has a potential to help countries with economies and workforce development nowadays?
Oh yes, there's been lots and lots of interest. The OECD did some big studies on it, and the Commonwealth of Learning has been very interested in PLAR. Yeah, there's lots of lots of countries. South Africa would be probably the preeminent example, where they used they made PLAR. They didn't call it PLAR; they called it Recognition of Prior Learning, RPL. But it was definitely part of their post-apartheid labor and education policy. So many countries that are developing national vocational frameworks have also pursued PLAR policy at the same time. And in the EU, they actually had a declaration, I can't remember the date at the moment, but it might have been 2012, that every EU citizen had to have access to PLAR by a certain date. Sorry, I can't remember what the date was off the top of my head.
There is quite a strong government support for PLAR in European Union.
Yes, in the EU, yeah, and other places. In Canada, it was done, the support was given by provincial governments, and it kind of fizzled a bit in Canada, mainly because Canada has such high post-secondary education completion rates. We're amongst the highest or the highest in the world in that regard. So our post-secondary institutions were full up of 18 to 25-year-olds who just came straight out of high school and had no ability, no non-formal learning to be assessed, and no need to have it assessed. But now, of course, it's very important for those internationally educated professionals, and certainly for First Nations people. And as you said, for reskilling after the COVID shutdowns.
It sounds like right now can be a prime time for PLAR to be in action, and especially when all of the circumstances have aligned in its favor. That was a great conversation. Thank you very much, Christine, for sharing your experience and insights. Without a doubt, it was great to learn about your path in prior learning assessment and recognition, as well as what PLAR is and how it works, and even tap into what PLAR is like in some other countries. This concludes our episode. Bye for now, and see you next time.